She called the cops to tear down my cabin on my own land. I was peacefully building this ranch cabin when this HOA Karen stormed onto my property, waving her phone like a weapon. "I need police here now to demolish this illegal shack," she screamed into her phone, demanding they bring bulldozers. Little did she know this cabin was a birthday gift for someone very important, and her rampage would cost her everything. I was hammering cedar planks onto the cabin frame when I heard the screech of tires on gravel. A white BMW came barreling down my dirt road like a bat out of hell. Out stepped Linda Hartwell, all 5 feet 4 inches of pure concentrated fury. Her bleached blonde hair was pulled back so tight it looked painful, and her designer tracksuit screamed, "I have too much time on my hands." She stormed across my property line, her phone already recording, jabbing it in my direction like a weapon. "You there. Stop what you're doing immediately. This eyesore is bringing down our property values," she shrieked, her voice hitting a pitch that made nearby birds take flight. I set down my hammer slowly, wiped the sweat from my brow, and gave her my best customer service smile. "Ma'am, I think you might be confused. This is private property and I have all the necessary permits." But Linda wasn't interested in facts. She never is. "Don't you ma'am me," she spat, circling me like a shark while keeping that phone trained on my face. "I'm the president of the Millfield Estates HOA, and we have strict regulations about what can and cannot be built in this area. This shack is an abomination." I couldn't help but chuckle. Millfield Estates was a good 2 miles east, a cookie-cutter development full of McMansions and perfectly manicured lawns. My land had never been part of any HOA, and I had the deed to prove it. "Listen, Linda," I started, but she cut me off with a dramatic gasp. "How dare you? My name is Mrs. Hartwell, and you will address me with respect." She was practically vibrating with rage now, her face turning an alarming shade of purple. That's when she pulled out her second phone, because of course she had two, and started dialing. "Hello, police? Yes, this is an emergency. There's a man illegally constructing a building on HOA property. He's being aggressive and refusing to comply with neighborhood regulations. I need you to come immediately and tear down this illegal structure. Yes, demolish it. It's a safety hazard and it's destroying our community. Bring whatever equipment you need to remove this eyesore now." I stood there, hammer still in hand, watching this performance with a mixture of amusement and disbelief. Aggressive? I hadn't even raised my voice. And tear it down? Did she think the police traveled with wrecking balls? Within 15 minutes, a patrol car pulled up, and out stepped Officer Dave Mitchell, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. He was a stocky guy in his 40s with a permanent 5 o'clock shadow and the weary expression of someone who'd dealt with Linda before. Linda launched into a tirade about property values, illegal construction, and the general decline of civilization as represented by my humble cabin. "Officer, I need you to call for backup. Maybe a bulldozer. This structure needs to come down immediately. It's a blight on our community." Dave listened patiently, occasionally glancing at me with what I swear was sympathy. When she finally ran out of steam, he sighed deeply. "Mrs. Hartwell, we're not a demolition crew. Police don't just tear down buildings. Even if this was illegal, which I doubt, we'd need a court order, proper procedures, safety inspections." Linda's face twisted in rage. "Then get a court order. Call a judge. This shack needs to come down today." Dave pulled out his tablet, clearly exhausted by this routine. "Let me first verify if this even falls under your HOA jurisdiction before we discuss any enforcement action." "That's impossible," she sputtered. "Check again. This whole area falls under our jurisdiction." But Dave was already closing his tablet, clearly done with this nonsense. "Mrs. Hartwell, this gentleman is well within his rights to build on his own land. I suggest you return to Millfield Estates and focus on properties actually under HOA control." He gave me a nod and headed back to his patrol car, but not before muttering, "Third time this month she's called about something outside her HOA." Linda stood there trembling with fury, her phone still recording. "This isn't over," she hissed. "I know people. Important people. This shack will come down. Mark my words." She stormed back to her SUV, but not before taking about 50 photos of my cabin from every conceivable angle. What Linda didn't know was that this wasn't just any cabin. This was a surprise birthday gift for my best friend from college, Sheriff Tom Bradley's son, Mike. The same Sheriff Bradley who ran the county police department. The same department that would be responding to any future calls about my illegal cabin. But I wasn't going to tell her that. Not yet. As Linda's BMW disappeared in a cloud of dust, I picked up my hammer and got back to work. I had a feeling this was just the beginning, but I also knew something Linda didn't. When you mess with the wrong person's family, you don't just get consequences. You get justice. And in this county, justice wore a badge. That evening, I called Mike to tell him about the crazy lady who tried to get the police to demolish his birthday surprise. Wait, what? Mike laughed. Some HOA president called the cops on you? For building on your own land? Yeah, and get this, she demanded they bring bulldozers to tear it down immediately. That's insane. What's her name? Linda Hartwell. Ring any bells? There was a pause. Actually, yeah. She's been filing complaints about everything for months. Dad's getting tired of her wasting police resources on civil disputes. Mike Bradley was a good guy. We'd been roommates at the state university and stayed close ever since. He worked in tech now, making good money, but he'd always dreamed of having a quiet place to escape to. When I bought this land and saw the perfect spot for a cabin, I knew exactly what I wanted to build for his upcoming birthday. Just ignore her, Mike said. She'll get bored and move on to harassing someone else. But Linda Hartwell wasn't the type to get bored. She was the type to escalate. The next morning, I woke up to find orange spray paint across the side of my cabin. Illegal was scrawled in dripping letters across the beautiful cedar siding I'd spent weeks installing. I called the sheriff's department to report the vandalism. Officer Martinez showed up within the hour. This is getting ridiculous, he said, taking photos of the damage. Mrs. Hartwell is really pushing boundaries now. You think she did this? Who else? She was here yesterday screaming about your cabin, and now someone vandalizes it overnight? Doesn't take a detective to connect those dots. Martinez dusted for fingerprints and collected paint samples. Problem is, unless we catch her in the act or find the spray can with her prints, it's hard to prove. That afternoon, Linda showed up again. This time she had backup, 3 other women from Millfield Estates, all carrying clipboards and wearing matching HOA volunteer shirts. We're conducting an official inspection, Linda announced, setting up a tripod with a camera. As concerned citizens, we have the right to document code violations. You're on private property, I said calmly. We're on a public easement, Linda shot back, though she was clearly standing well onto my land. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Ladies, you're trespassing. I'm asking you to leave. We'll leave when we're finished documenting this eyesore, Linda said, directing her volunteers to take photos from every angle. That's when I noticed one of them had an orange paint smudge on her sneaker. Nice shoes, I said to the woman. Orange is a bold choice. She looked down and her face went pale. I was painting my fence yesterday. What color? White. Linda shot her a furious look. We're done here. Come on, ladies. As they packed up their equipment, Linda turned back to me. You think you're smart, don't you? Well, let's see how smart you feel when the county inspector shuts you down. The county inspector showed up the next day. Bob Martinez was a tired-looking guy in his 50s who clearly didn't want to be there. I'm sorry about this, he said, checking his clipboard. Mrs. Hartwell filed a complaint claiming code violations. I have to investigate every complaint, even the bogus ones. How many complaints has she filed? This month? 14. This year? Over 100. Bob walked around the cabin, checking everything twice. She's been making my life hell. Half the complaints are about things that aren't even violations. After 2 hours of inspection, Bob shook his head. Everything's perfect. Better than perfect, actually. You do professional work. Thanks. So we're good. As far as I'm concerned, yes. But Mrs. Hartwell will probably appeal my findings. She always does. Sure enough, 3 days later I got a certified letter from the county. Linda had appealed the inspection results and demanded a second opinion from the state building authority. This was getting expensive and time-consuming. Every day dealing with Linda's harassment was a day I wasn't working on Mike's cabin. His birthday was only 6 weeks away. That's when I decided to get creative. I called my buddy Steve, who worked for the local newspaper. Steve, how would you like to write a story about HOA overreach? I'm listening. I've got a HOA president who's harassing a contractor building a cabin for the sheriff's son, but she doesn't know who it's for. Sheriff Bradley's son? Mike, that's your college buddy, right? Yep. And she's been filing false complaints, vandalizing property, and wasting police resources. Send me everything you've got. I spent the evening putting together a package for Steve. Photos of the vandalism, copies of all Linda's complaints, recordings of her trespassing, and testimony from Officer Martinez about her pattern of harassment. The story ran on the front page of the weekend edition, HOA President's Campaign of Harassment Targets Sheriff's Son's Birthday Gift. Steve had done his homework. The article detailed Linda's history of frivolous complaints, her harassment of multiple residents, and the waste of public resources investigating her bogus claims. But the real kicker was the photo. Steve had gotten a picture of Linda spray painting "illegal" on my cabin. Turns out, Mrs. Johnson across the road had security cameras that captured the whole thing. Linda's reaction was swift and predictable. She called the newspaper, threatened to sue, and claimed the story was fake news. She also doubled down on her harassment campaign. Monday morning brought a new escalation. I arrived at the construction site to find 3 trucks parked in my driveway. Linda had hired a private security company to monitor illegal construction activities. The security guards looked embarrassed when I explained the situation. "Ma'am," one of them said to Linda, "this is private property. We can't legally monitor anything from here. I'm paying you to document violations." Linda shrieked. "We can document from the public road, but we can't trespass." Linda fired them on the spot and stormed off, but not before making one final threat. "You think the newspaper story embarrassed me? Wait until you see what happens next." What happened next was a lawsuit. Linda sued me for defamation, claiming the newspaper story had damaged her reputation and caused her emotional distress. The lawsuit papers were delivered by a process server who apologized for disturbing my work. Linda was seeking $100,000 in damages, plus an injunction to stop construction on the cabin. I called my lawyer Jim Patterson, who'd handled the purchase of my land. "This is harassment litigation," Jim said after reviewing the papers. "She's trying to bankrupt you with legal fees. Unfortunately, even frivolous lawsuits cost money to defend." "How much money?" "Could be $15,000–20,000. Maybe more if she drags it out." I didn't have that kind of money sitting around. But I had something better. I had the truth and I had friends. That evening, Sheriff Bradley called me personally. "Jake, I heard about the lawsuit. This has gone far enough." "Sheriff, I don't want to drag you into this." "Son, she dragged me into it when she started harassing someone building a gift for my boy. Mike told me about the cabin and I think it's a beautiful gesture. Nobody's going to stop you from finishing it." "I appreciate that, but..." "No buts. Linda Hartwell has been a thorn in this county's side for 2 years. She's wasted more police resources than any 10 criminals combined. It's time someone stood up to her." The next day, Sheriff Bradley held a press conference. He stood in front of the county courthouse in his full uniform, looking every inch the authority figure he was. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to address a situation that's been developing in our county. An HOA president has been harassing a local contractor who's building a birthday gift for my son. This harassment has included vandalism, trespassing, false police reports, and frivolous litigation." He paused, looking directly into the cameras. "Let me be clear. The construction project in question is completely legal, properly permitted, and being built on private property that has never been part of any HOA. Mrs. Linda Hartwell's campaign of harassment is not only wrong, it's potentially criminal. Furthermore, Mrs. Hartwell has filed over 100 false complaints with various county departments this year, wasting taxpayer resources and our officers' time. This pattern of abuse ends now." The press conference was picked up by every local news station and went viral on social media. Within hours, #Linda Hartwell was trending with people sharing their own HOA horror stories. Linda's response was to double down again. She held her own press conference the next day, claiming she was the victim of a conspiracy between the sheriff's department and corrupt contractors. "They're trying to silence me because I stand up for property values and community standards," she declared, standing in front of Millfield Estates' manicured entrance. But her support was crumbling. 3 HOA board members resigned, saying they couldn't support her aggressive tactics. Residents of Millfield Estates started speaking out about her harassment and demanding her resignation. The final straw came when Mike Bradley decided to make a surprise visit. I was putting the finishing touches on the cabin's front porch when I heard multiple vehicles approaching. A convoy of black SUVs rolled up my driveway, followed by Sheriff Bradley's patrol car. Out of the lead SUV stepped Mike, wearing an expensive suit and designer sunglasses. Behind him came his security detail. Turns out he'd been promoted to a pretty high position in his tech company and warranted protection. But the real surprise was the third vehicle. Governor Morrison himself had come to see what all the fuss was about. "Jake," Mike called out, striding across the yard with a huge grin. "I couldn't wait for my birthday. I had to see this masterpiece." As Mike toured the cabin, praising every detail and asking about the construction process, more vehicles arrived. Linda Hartwell's white BMW screeched to a halt, and she jumped out like her hair was on fire. "What's all this commotion?" she demanded, then stopped cold when she saw the official vehicles and armed security. She approached cautiously, phone already recording. "Excuse me, but this is still an illegal structure and I don't care how many people." She stopped mid-sentence when Sheriff Bradley stepped into view in his full uniform. "Mrs. Hartwell," he said formally, "I believe we need to have a conversation." Sheriff Bradley. Finally. Someone with authority who can deal with this situation. "I've been trying to get law enforcement to take action against this illegal construction for weeks." Sheriff Bradley's expression was stone cold. "Ma'am, the only illegal activity I've seen is your campaign of harassment against Mr. Jake here." Linda's face went white, then red. "Harassment? I'm protecting our community values. This shack is—" "This cabin," Sheriff Bradley interrupted, "is a birthday gift for my son, Mike Bradley." The young man standing right there. Linda's mouth fell open. She looked from the sheriff to Mike to me, her brain trying to process this new information. Your son?" she whispered. "That's right. And you've been harassing the man building a gift for my family." Mike stepped forward, extending his hand to Linda. "Mrs. Hartwell, I presume? I'm Mike Bradley. I understand you have some concerns about my birthday present." Linda just stared at his hand, unable to speak. That's when Governor Morrison decided to join the conversation. "Sheriff Bradley, is this the woman who's been causing all the trouble?" Linda's eyes went wide as she recognized the governor. She started stammering apologies and explanations, but nobody was listening. "Mrs. Hartwell," Governor Morrison said calmly, "I understand you've filed over 100 false complaints this year, wasted significant public resources, and engaged in what appears to be criminal harassment. Is that correct?" I was just, property values, community standards." "Sheriff Bradley, I think Mrs. Hartwell needs to understand the seriousness of filing false police reports and engaging in harassment campaigns." "Yes, sir." "Mrs. Hartwell, you're under arrest for filing false police reports, criminal harassment, vandalism, and trespassing." As the handcuffs clicked into place, Linda finally found her voice. "You can't do this. I have rights. I was protecting the community. I didn't know it was for the sheriff's son." "And that makes it okay to harass people?" Mike asked. "You only respect people if they have powerful connections?" The arrest footage, taken by multiple news crews who'd followed the governor, went viral immediately. Linda's perp walk in handcuffs became a meme, with captions like, "When Karen calls the cops on the cop's boss's son." The lawsuit was dropped the next day. Linda's lawyer withdrew from the case, citing irreconcilable differences with the client. Linda pled guilty to multiple charges and was sentenced to 6 months in jail, 2 years probation and a $10,000 fine. She was also banned from serving on any HOA board for 10 years. The Millfield Estates HOA voted unanimously to remove her as president and issued a formal apology to me and everyone else she'd harassed. Mike's birthday party was epic. We held it at the completed cabin with Sheriff Bradley, Governor Morrison, and half the county in attendance. The local news covered it as a feel-good story about community coming together. Linda Hartwell served her time and moved to Florida after her release. I heard she tried to join an HOA there but was rejected when they did a background check. The cabin became a local landmark. People would drive by just to see the Linda Hartwell cabin, the place where an HOA Karen finally met her match. Mike still uses it regularly, bringing friends and family for weekend retreats. Every time we sit on that front porch watching the sunset, we remember the crazy woman who tried to tear it down and ended up tearing down her own life instead. The best part? The cabin is absolutely beautiful. All that harassment and drama, and Linda never once actually looked at the quality of the work. If she had, she might have realized she was attacking a masterpiece. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Linda had just been friendly from the start. If she'd introduced herself as a neighbor, asked about the project, maybe even offered to help or bring lemonade to the construction site. But that's not who she was. She was a bully who picked the wrong target. And bullies, eventually, always get what's coming to them. 3 years later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, postmarked from Florida. "Mr. Jake, I want you to know that I've learned from my mistakes. I was wrong to treat you the way I did. The cabin is beautiful and I hope Mike enjoys it for many years. I'm in therapy now and working on being a better person. I'm sorry for everything. Linda Hartwell." I showed the letter to Mike when he came up for his annual birthday weekend. "Think she means it?" he asked. "Maybe. People can change. Should we write her back?" I thought about it for a long moment, then shook my head. Sometimes the best response is no response. She needs to move on with her life and we need to move on with ours. We never heard from Linda Hartwell again. But every year on Mike's birthday, when we're sitting on that porch sharing a beer and watching the sunset, we tell the story of the HOA Karen who called the cops to tear down a cabin. And every year we laugh a little harder at the irony of it all. Because in the end, the only thing that got torn down was Linda's reign of terror. And that cabin is still standing strong, a monument to what happens when good people stand up to bullies. Mike's kids love it there. They call it Daddy's special house, and ask to visit every summer. Sometimes I watch them playing in the yard where Linda once stood screaming about property values, and I think about how different the world could be if more people chose kindness over conflict. But then again, if Linda had chosen kindness, we wouldn't have this amazing story to tell. And what a story it is.